welcome to all you rad people out there from whatever rad time you're watching at whatever rad place. You know the drill. I'm Ryan.
And I'm David.
And that together makes us rad. And we're feeling super rad today because we have an extra rad guest. You might know her and remember her from, she might have been your English teacher, in fact, at some point in time. But now she's off on her own adventures and she's here to tell us how things have gone for us. Please welcome to the Rad Podcast, Teacher Lindsay.
Hey. Welcome, Lindsay. It's an honor to meet you. I've heard many great things from the 10th graders about you, so it's an honor to meet you and have you on the podcast today. I'm just curious, Lindsay, what are you doing these days, actually?
Thanks so much, David. I'm so excited to be here.
Right.
So I'm moved back home. I'm in Atlanta, Georgia. I am currently, I'll get into that later, but I'm an assistant teacher at a local high school here, and I'm actually teaching Spanish. And I've started graduate school, which I'm studying to be a school counselor as well as a licensed professional counselor.
Oh, very cool. And you're teaching Spanish. Did you feel that your presence in a multicultural setting or in a fully speaking community enhanced your Spanish abilities? You having spent a few years down in Colombia?
Yeah, I definitely did. When I first moved to South America, I didn't really know any Spanish. I knew very basic Spanish. And so I lived in Ecuador, and a lot of the students already know this, but I moved from Ecuador to Colombia to kind of be forced to speak more Spanish. And so that's definitely helped me enhance my Spanish speaking abilities and be more confident in it.
Oh, fantastic. I definitely agree with that aspect that you bring up of being in a setting that is around a language, because you're infused into a society. And by the moment that you're infused, you have to adapt, and that's what I think is I do believe the best way of learning language is when you're infused into the language through society and you're learning all the social norms, you're learning, the ways things are mentioned and talked about. It's definitely a method I think that helps people learn. And in your case, as you described it, it definitely helped you, right?
Yeah, it definitely did. And I even with my students here in the United States, I really encourage them to take on some of the study abroad trips that they can. And I would encourage that for the Colombian students as well. But I was also, just like the students I teach here, in the United States, you really only have to take 2 years of a foreign language in order to get into a university. So I did that. I didn't speak any Spanish. I didn't learn any. I didn't know anything about the culture, and then decided to move to Colombia, Ecuador first. And I just learned all about the culture. I fell in love with the culture. And more than the language, I learned to dance. I learned to
that's something I'm trying to think about, but luckily I'm practicing by doing it at home, and I don't have a crowd, I don't have a teacher, but I'm tapping my feet here and there. Even right now I may be dancing, but you don't see it.
Oh yeah, I feel I stopped dancing since I've moved home, and since the quarantine started, the studio I used to take classes at in Colombia started offering Facebook Live classes in salsa and bachata, so I've been doing those. So I've been immersed in Colombia a little bit.
Nice. Very cool.
Yeah.
And how is the experience of teaching Spanish, let's say, translated from your experience in teaching English? Do you feel do you use any of the same strategies, or is it a totally different ball game because of the level of the speakers, or how does that work?
I would say it's very different. One, just coming from the perspective that I'm an assistant teacher, so I don't have that much say into what actually happens in the classroom. So I actually, unfortunately, disagree with a lot of the strategies and techniques my lead teacher puts into place. She's great, but just the, education system in the United States is very grammar focused and very, you just learn the basics, like, hi, how are you? But you aren't doing any kind of real communication. So most of the students I work with don't come out even being able to have a full conversation. And the emphasis and the focus is really just put on testing. So they're not projects. I did get my co-teacher to do a project this year, and we're looking at doing some pen pal stuff, but that's been a stretch to even get them to think as far as that goes. So it's been a really different experience than the project-based learning at San Miguel.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, no, very, very popular. We did a really cool PBL with virtual reality this year, and that was, that's the nice thing about, like you mentioned, doing a project is it's kind of like it's a process, and it's like step by step you're learning something about the process. Well, through this step by steps you're learning about something, and definitely in agreement there. PBL projects really, really a nice way to enhance learning, definitely.
Yeah, I definitely miss doing those. I mean, the focus on the U.S. is very much on memorization, I found. So just memorizing that hola means hello and being able to put that down on a test instead of really incorporate it into your life. So I really try to, at least from my perspective, give the students that I come in contact with, like, hey, this is actually really important. And I was right where you guys were 10 years ago. I didn't want to be in Spanish class, but then, I moved my whole life. So try to learn some of it while you can.
And Lindsay, I'm curious on one thing, because you brought up the fact of essentially, learning and being in that system. But in the American system, they use the A through F as a grade system. And here we use the number system of a 1 to 100. And that was something for me I had to adapt, because I'm normally used to the, putting a letter grade and an effort grade as well. Are you having effort grades as well, or is it just the letter grade that's appearing for students?
So in the school I work for, it's just the letter grade that comes up. So yeah, like you said, A through F. And there's no, you don't really get graded for participation or anything like that. It's basically just on the worksheets you do, the test you complete.
Yeah. That's go for it, Ryan. No, go.
Just going to ask, how's virtual school going in the United States? So I assume that you guys are still in classes, or,
yeah.
or since you're in Georgia, is everybody going back to school now?
Everybody's not going back to school, thankfully. I thought that was going to happen when our governor announced that we're opening our state back up, but we're still out of school. We're doing virtual school. So we were actually one of the first states before the really heavily affected states to go on to the virtual schooling. So as soon as there was one case of COVID-19 in our community, we went ahead and went online. And it's weird because I guess depending on the subject, you are either doing like how do you say that?
Synchronicity?
Yeah, one of those words, at the same time, classes face-to-face like we're doing now, or maybe you're just using Google Classroom and completing assignments. So I actually don't have much, face-to-face with students, but I'm in charge of running help sessions for all of the Spanish classes, Spanish 1 through Spanish Honors, which has also been really interesting because I don't know a lot of the stuff that they teach in Spanish Honors. But thus far, there have been no students to come to help sessions, and that's because they announced that pretty much as long as you had a passing grade before the online classes, then you will pass the year. And so people kind of dropped off from that. And then we kind of privately got some information that no student is allowed to fail the year this year because of the terms of the online schooling, which has, left us to a lot less contact and engagement from students.
Oh, definitely.
So they're less motivated to really focus on learning something maybe than just kind of being content with their grade.
Right. They're just content. They don't really want to learn. I think they've just started summer and are having a long summer break.
Wow. And has summer actually begun in Georgia? Is the temperature warm?
We're in spring right now, so we have a lot of pollen, which is allergy season down here. And so the temperatures are like 60s and 70s, which I guess is similar to like what Columbia is most of the year. Yeah, in Pereira. But we should be starting summer soon, but I don't know. It's so weird. One day last week we were in the 40s and this week we're in the 70s. So it's kind of hard to tell.
Spring has always been my least favorite season of the year anyway. So confusing. Yeah.
I like the season, but I've had to get used to the allergies again.
Yeah, the allergies. That's what I mean. I spent time down in Texas, and that's what kicked me in the back. Honestly, was the allergy season. You know, it's not springtime; it's allergy season. That's what I defined it as. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's been the weird thing here too about even just like COVID-19 is like people are having to differentiate between like cold symptoms or flu symptoms and COVID-19 symptoms as well as allergy symptoms. So it's been an added level of thing for people since it started about the same time.
And Lindsay, I wanted to ask you something because when you brought up the fact that you're in this, you're in high school and you're helping, you're an assistant for the Spanish department. I'm curious because I didn't take high school classes in the U.S. in Spanish. I took them a little bit more in university, but even in university, I had some teachers that were from Spain and others that were from South America, and they were like two altering kind of, ways of learning Spanish. I remember advanced grammar was focusing on the Spanish method. And then after advanced speaking was focusing on the South American because of the teachers. For you at the high school level, do you find that there's a focus on South American Spanish or a focus towards Spain Spanish? For me, I notice a difference because I'm half Spanish, half American. So I was curious in the high school level, there is that discrepancy. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's all focused mainly on South American Spanish. And the reason I say that, I guess there's a little bit of a culture study in Spain and stuff, but the Spanish itself, students aren't taught vosotros at all. I don't know if they even teach that when they teach. I don't know. But when I took Spanish, it was the same way. I never learned how to use vosotros, but they're definitely not being taught that. And actually, the teachers in the department I work on are Puerto Rican, I think Cuban. There's one, my other teacher that I work with is from Pereira, actually.
Really?
And yeah, it's such a small world. She had like the picture of the bridge up there, the Viaducta, is that what it was called?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I was like, wait, is that Pereira? And she was like, yeah. So that's a small world. And then another one of the teachers is from Venezuela.
It's funny that you bring up there's that teacher from Pereira because I had an interaction a couple months ago with someone. They're like, oh, no, I'm half Spanish. My brother lives in a small town called Soria, Spain. And she's like, oh, yeah, no, I have a cousin that lives in Soria, Spain. I'm like, what? Nobody knows where this town is. It's literally got a population of less than 50,000. So when I called my brother up, I'm like, hey, dude, I met someone here that says they know about Soria because they know they have a cousin that lives in Colombia. And he's like, oh, wait a second. I think I know this person. And my brother puts himself in contact. I'm like, wow, Pereira having that global reach, actually, funny enough, of like, even if it's a cousin or a family member somewhere else, I'm like, I was baffled, if you will, that my brother knew someone's cousin that I had met on the weekend. I'm like, small world right there. Yeah.
It really is. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was put in, her name's Claudia, and I was put in touch with her nephew to like talk on the phone and help him with his English some. But then I ended up putting him in touch with another friend of mine that works at Liceo Inglés, and she actually ended up and did some like intercambios with him.
Nice.
So.
Nice. Very cool. Very cool.
Too small of a world. So since you were in Latin America for like 3 years, right? Mm-hmm. And so when you went back home, what was the process like? I mean, how did you feel being back in your native culture? Did you feel strange at all, or did you feel like any culture shock?
Yeah. So with going back to the United States and back to Atlanta, there was a lot of different things that kind of went into it. I was moving back home. I moved in with my parents after not living with them for 7 years. I started studying again after not studying for 5 years. So there was a lot of newness. So sometimes it was kind of hard to identify whether it was coming from like culture shock or just like life shock. But I'd say it was really difficult. The first few months were actually really exciting because I'd missed all this. I got to see a bunch of people and catch up with them. But I'd say around like November, December, I started really getting kind of melancholy and like missing parts of South America. And like craving foods I never thought I would crave from South America. Yeah, craving arepas and like
I bet you that.
So that's been weird, but it's definitely been a challenge getting back into things, and just also not like, I don't know exactly how to explain it, but kind of placing my worldview on other people when I'm like, oh, that's how they do it in South America. Oh, that's and I can't think of an exact example of when that's happened, but a lot with like the education and stuff of like, oh, I wish we were doing a PBL, or oh, I wish that we were going dancing tonight instead of just going and talking, like just different things like that I didn't really realize were going to be kind of ingrained into who I became when I was living in South America.
No, you bring up that's a fantastic point, because in many ways, you know, when you do spend time in other parts of the world, and I've bounced around myself quite a bit, you know, you develop a new norm, right? A new norm that you define things as, like, what's normal for me now? You know, I've had these experiences, but now what's my new norm? So you kind of, I don't know, for me at least, I've gone through a period of questioning. Like when I was in Nepal for a couple of months and I was teaching out there, I came back and I was like, wait a second, we have meat on the table? You're saying I can order a steak? Oh my goodness, the delight that I'll have tonight. Yeah, so, you know, there's that new definition of what's normal, you know, and
right.
that's something that you went through as well. What's my new norm once I go through these experiences, right?
Yeah, something I like that was really weird with the new normal was like the WhatsApp and the texting.
Yeah.
Voice messages, like nobody sends voice messages in the United States.
Yeah.
And so I would send these like 3-minute voice messages and they'd be like, can you just call me, or can you send me a text message?
I know exactly. Yeah. Or like, I don't use Facebook Messenger, but like all my American friends, they'll contact me through Facebook Messenger and I'll be like, have you not heard of WhatsApp? Like everyone in the world uses it these days. Come on. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it's been different. But I think now I've been home for almost a year now. I'm about a month away from being home from a year, and I'm starting to get settled in. But I think there's just always going to be things that, you know, left their mark on me from Colombia and that I've just kind of ingrained in who I am now.
Really? And would you think about coming back? Would you?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I would come. Yeah, you know, I talk to Martika every now and then, just like coming back. I really wanted to come back this year. I was thinking about coming to Colombia for the Copa America. And so I was like, how can I fit a trip into Pereira and also go to Copa America? Obviously, I don't think that's happening anymore, but I mean, I'll definitely look into coming in the years to come. So
fantastic.
In a weird way, I actually got back here, and a few months after being back, I started dating someone who's from Colombia. So that's also a weird thing that happened.
Very nice. So Lindsay, you told us that you're currently also in university and you're doing some studies in university. Can you elaborate on the studies in university that you're doing, and what specifically is it that made you choose that interest in what you're studying? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. So I studied psychology in undergrad, and I always kind of knew that I wanted to go into the helping profession and work with kids and adolescents. And I wasn't really sure what that would look like for me. I didn't really want to be a psychologist or psychiatrist. So that's when I kind of found myself get into teaching a little bit and moved to Ecuador and South America. And when I was down, I would say in Colombia, actually, last year is when I kind of had this realization, epiphany that was that I wanted to go into counseling. So what I'm studying right now, I'm studying at a school called Mercer University in Atlanta. It's a private university that's main campus is in Macon, which is kind of like the southern part of Georgia. And then we have my campus, which is in Atlanta. And so I'm studying school counseling right now, which do they have, what would you say for counseling in Spanish? Like, it's close to like a school psychologist, I think would almost be the closest thing.
Yeah, I mean, my best knowledge is of our own school, obviously. And so we don't really have counselors so much as, like psychologists. The psychologists do the career orientation and things like that.
Right. And so when I was in Columbia, I actually had a lot of conversations with Lena about school psychology and what that looked like for her. So that would be, I think, my closest comparison as well, would be with Lena. So I'm studying school counseling, which essentially has to do with guidance for students. So if you're having mental health issues, you might come talk to me. If you're, struggling on what you want to do after high school, then you would come and speak with me while you're in high school. Anything, I'm kind of besides your teacher, the person you would come and talk with.
Yeah.
And so I decided I want to do that because I love the relationship I was able to have with students, aside from the teaching aspect and more of the personal one-on-one, hey, what's going on at home aspect. And then I also had some trying situations when I was in Ecuador and Colombia that led me to really want to pursue school counseling. So ideally, I'll do school counseling at the high school level, and then in a few years, I'll move into a private practice position.
Nice. And the senior project that you helped guide last year had to do with counseling as well. So it was kind of like a pre-grad school practice, I guess.
Yeah, that was really cool. It's funny how that lined up because I learned a lot from them, and then I would sit in the meetings with them with Lena, and I learned a ton from Lena. That was a really cool project.
Yeah.
I'm myself, because I've often heard of the terms school psychologist and then school counselor. What would you say is the difference between the two? I'm just for my own curious.
So a school counselor, well, I'll start with a school psychologist. So a school psychologist works more with students' IEPs, so their individualized education plans. And so students who have diagnoses of whether that's ADHD or maybe an anxiety disorder, they're going to be the ones that kind of work on that and provide the accommodations, make sure those are being met at the state and national level. And are also able to administer different types of testing and assessments to be able to diagnose. I, as a counselor, I cannot diagnose anybody with a disorder, but I also help with the accommodations. But I'm the, I would say the first responder to a mental health issue before it gets to the point that maybe there needs to be a diagnosis. Also, school counselors have a lot of other, responsibilities such as scheduling. They put together student schedules, make sure they're on par for graduation, make sure they're just doing the day-to-day activities that they're supposed to be.
So I would figure as a counselor, you would get a lot more one-to-one action than as a psychologist. Would my assumption be right in that?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So counselors have the goal to meet all their students at least once a year. Because the school I work at now has 2,300 students.
Yeah.
So there's 6 counselors, that's 400 students per counselor. So their goal is to meet them at least once a year. Whereas a school psychologist might not know 80% of the student body.
Yeah. Okay. Very interesting. And when you finish, is it an accredited program through what is it, APA, which is not the writing format? I'm talking the American Psychological Association, or would it be as a counselor on its own individual entity? Yeah.
So it's on its own individual entity, which is called KCREP. I don't know what that stands for.
Okay.
Unfortunately, that's probably something I should learn. But I'll graduate under KCREP and be certified in the state of Georgia.
Nice.
Okay.
That's one other thing about being certified in the state of Georgia that you brought up. America is such a large place with so many different states, but you're limited in terms of where you want to teach, right? You can't say one day, oh, I want to go teach in California, and you move out to California. There's a process to it all. Whilst, I guess in many other parts of the world, I did my schooling in England and Spain for some time. So I also know, to become a teacher there, it was pretty much if you want to go to the other part of the country, no problem, go for it. There's that, I don't know, can we call it red tape, in the U.S. in terms of being a teacher? I don't know.
It's funny because that's exactly the issue that we're dealing with right now with COVID. I mean, as you know, as a nation, right, we might have one idea about what's the correct thing to do, but then each state also has its own plan, and they have their own ways to. It's one of the more complex things about the United States, really, is that whole division between the country itself and then each individual state as an independent entity. And for things like career development, it's kind of a bit of a block, right? Because maybe you don't want to stay in your state forever. I mean, and it kind of pushes people towards limiting their lives in that way. Like, well, I graduated from the university in Nevada. I got my teaching license in Nevada, so I guess I'm gonna be in Nevada.
Yeah.
No, I don't know. I question whether or not. I think there's been some movements in the past, especially since Common Core standards have become sort of dominant throughout the country, that the idea would be that you could actually certify yourself nationally, which would would open up opportunities for people to move. I think people moving around is good, healthy.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it kind of makes me question like the equity of it too. So like if I'm having to study this course in Georgia, but you're not having to study this course in Missouri, are the students still getting the same education? Is the equity still the same of their education and their opportunity? Like, I don't know. It's a question to think about when we're all being, taking different things perhaps.
Right. And so speaking of COVID reactions now, Lindsay, you're in Georgia, and so to contextualize those who might not know, Georgia is one of the states that's sort of leading the charge, right?
Yeehaw.
Oh my God, the things that I will do just to go to Georgia and have a nice game of bowling for 10 rounds and, try and get over 100. Oh my goodness, I would. Oh, the things I would do just to have a game of bowling right now. I tell you that. Oh my goodness.
One of those essential things.
Yeah.
Oh,
so how's that gone? Have you heard any news, or have you seen any crazy behavior yet?
So we haven't had much crazy behavior that I've heard of. So Georgia's opening the state today, and so as of today you can get your hair done, you can go to a massage parlor, tattoo parlor, the bowling alley. Those are all the essential things that our governor believes we need to have access to today. And then on Monday we also have restaurants opening, bars opening, all of those. So as of right now, there hasn't been too much on the news. This morning there were lines outside of hair salons, that barber shops, that people were waiting to get their hair cut. Which how you can, make sure that you're following the response, or sorry, I can't talk right now. Make sure that you're following the recommendation for social distancing while you're cutting someone's hair. I'm not really sure how you can cut someone's hair 6 feet away.
Funny because, my dad's a big golf player. He loves golf to the point that he'll send me golf memes. And I'm like, Dad, you're talking to, a 20-year-old who doesn't really like to watch golf for 5 hours on the TV, but he'll send me these golf memes. And he sent me something like 2 weeks ago. And he's like, the state of New York is opening up their golf courses. I'm like, all right, Dad, what? You're going to go to like the center of COVID-19 and play some golf? But then again, I can see, golf being socially distancing, like, how's your ball over there? There's that kind of element as well. So, yeah, I can see some of these things that would be okay to open, definitely. Yeah.
Golf may be the most appropriate sport to play right now, actually. Just
but
as long as you have separate.
I need to tell him no more golf memes. I cannot deal with these golf memes. Memes. I
wish I knew that golf memes existed. Can you please send me the golf memes?
I just may send you one or two that he sends me.
Forward them to my dad. I guess there's memes about everything. Well, Lindsay, I don't know. Is there anything else that you'd like to say to your former students? Is there any pieces of advice maybe that you have in this time of crisis? What have you been doing to kind of stay chill, stay calm, stay mentally healthy. What do you think other people should be doing right now?
Yeah. I can kind of talk about, I guess, kind of my self-care routine during this weird time. So, and just things that I've been told to do to kind of keep our sanity during this weird time. But I would definitely recommend, and we've all been doing this now for a while, so I hope everybody has their kind of way of doing things at this point. But I definitely have to have a routine. So, the first few days was nice to sleep in, but now I have to get up and actually shower and like make myself presentable to the world, even though I'm not seeing anybody. And then another thing, I've been using this time just because I have more and more time on my hands to actually implement things that I've been wanting to try out. So meditation, I've been really trying to get into that since I have time and make that an actual practice.
6:45 every morning. Ryan does a meditation on the channel. Yeah, you're more than welcome to join him.
At 6:45?
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
Colombian Standard Time.
Yeah.
I will join you. That
Awesome.
sounds great.
Awesome. Yeah.
Let's see, what else have I been doing? I go on like 3 walks a day. So that's been nice, just getting outside, some fresh air. Yeah. But other than that, I think these types of things, like the being connected with one another through technology, is really important right now. One of the things we've been talking about in my classes is, instead of calling it social distancing, calling it physical distancing. Yeah. Because we're not actually socially distant, because we're still able to socialize, but we're physically distant. Mm-hmm. So staying as social as you can with the help of technology.
I've already had like 3 Zoom birthday parties, and it was pretty fun. It was weird, but also like pretty fun. Like, I tried giving my buddy a high five, but I guess I ended up slapping my computer. So, but I had quite a few nice birthday parties on Zoom, actually. So I think people should keep on, having birthday parties or sessions, group sessions, right, with one another, because the worst thing is when you got 5 different voices speaking to you and they're all in one room. So, well, yeah.
It's funny that some of these things we didn't do before, and there's no reason why we didn't do them. It's just that now the idea finally occurs to us, like, oh, we could do that, right?
Right, and we kind of we make the time for it. And I've been really, I don't know, kind of careful at the beginning. I was like, oh, I have all this time to do these things, but then I have to remind myself, like, we're in a full-fledged pandemic right now. If somebody doesn't want to do something or has, anxiety or just isn't up for it that day, like, that's okay too. So just like being kind to ourselves right now during this time too is really important.
I think we're maybe more sensitive to everybody's kind of unique rhythms and tastes, and realize that that's important. And I guess because when we're from our own homes, we feel more, I don't know, entitled to have our own sort of personal space, personal way of being. But it's nice now we're kind of all realizing, oh yeah, everybody's a little bit different than me, right? Nobody's quite the same, and so everybody's going to have their own reaction.
Mm-hmm.
I got to thinking about this the other day, and I don't know, maybe you guys can argue against it, but I sometimes felt, it was an idea that I had, and it was like, we're the most, we keep to our inherent nature the most when we're on our own. I don't know if you guys would agree with that. I know, Ryan, you live with someone. Lindsay, you're at home, so you see family at least, right? Mm-hmm. But you maybe say that, we're the most, that we as humans, we behave the most like our inherent nature, the way that we are, when we're on our own, or I don't know. That was an idea that I had. Yeah.
That's a tough one, man. I'm not 100% sure. It seems immediately like it would be correct, right? Like, yeah, but you're not putting on a show for anyone else, right? I mean, you're just being you.
But then there's the counter argument where it's like, you can look back at I can't remember the philosopher, but it's like, humans are social creatures, so I don't know, it kind of can go 2 ways. Yeah. But
I kind of think that maybe you know, maybe most natural, but I don't know if that's necessarily the most real or the most authentic. I think maybe authenticity actually comes out when you're
that's
actually living life, right?
Yeah.
When you're actually being with other people. I think that's where you have the opportunity to be authentic, or the opposite also, right?
Yeah, no, true. Mm-hmm.
An interesting thought.
Yeah.
Food for thought.
Yes, indeed.
Okay.
Well, any other messages, Lindsay, for your students?
Well, I just want to say hey to everybody, and I hope everybody's doing really well. Y'all are always welcome to, send me a message or whatever. And like a big congratulations to the seniors that are graduating.
Yeah. They definitely, I think they deserve a little extra special recognition.
Yeah.
It's going to be tough, not having all the normal trappings of being a senior. So.
Yeah, I feel for them, for you guys. But I'm really proud of you guys, and you guys are almost done. Then you guys move on to the next part of your lives.
Surprisingly.
That's really woo.
Can't believe midterms like 1 week away. I'm like, wait, what? Where did time go? Yeah.
Oh yeah, when are you guys finished with school?
June
12th?
14th?
14th, yeah. 14th, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that week.
Almost. Awesome.
Yeah, it's coming very quick.
And Lindsay, for your summer plans, what are you planning on doing? Working, or you got your studies for the summer? Is it a 1 year, 2 year program, or?
Well, it's actually a 3-year program. So I've got a whole 2 more years left. So I will be doing that over the summer. I am nannying over the summer. So I'm nannying a family of boys. Hopefully, this is all, up in the air right now. And then I also have a plane ticket that I bought randomly to go to California for a week at the end of July. Again, very dependent on what happens, but I couldn't pass it up. So.
Or the south of California?
To the south, to like San Diego.
Oh, yeah.
And I think we're going to try to go to like Death Valley and Joshua's Tree.
Oh, Joshua's Tree. Yeah, no, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool.
Yeah. So, woo, summer. My summer has started.
We'll see if it involves going outside or not.
Yes, we will see.
Have to be
I
seen.
mean, I can essentially go back to normal today if I wanted, thanks to Governor Kemp. I have good old Donald Trump leading the nation and Governor Kemp leading my state.
Keeping us safe.
Oh, yes.
Oh, man.
All right.
Well, I guess that about wraps up this very rad podcast. We'd like to thank you, Lindsay, for coming today. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you, guys. This was so much fun.
You know that you have a huge place in our hearts at Liceo Terrier San Miguel, and that we would always love to have you come visit us.
Yes, I will hopefully do that soon. Thank you guys so much.
Awesome.
All right.
Well, to all of you viewers out there, another installment of the Rad Podcast. And remember, I'm Ryan.
And I'm David.
And that makes us rad.
Rad. Nope. Boys and girls, you have a lovely morning, day, or afternoon, depending on when you are watching this, and take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.